The Wolf Who Cried Wolf by Tina Baker. I first heard this story from my grandmother, who heard it from her grandmother at some point. If we go back far enough, a witch makes an appearance, but whether the story really started with her or before her, I'm not sure. Regardless of its origins, it took place a long, long time ago, at a time when magic was commonplace and bears and wolves roamed the dark woods, eating porridge and little girls in red cloaks. Lycidas was the alpha wolf of a small pack that patrolled the outskirts of the village of Randall. Lycidas and his ancestors had been there long before Randall, but the growing settlement of the people had pushed the wolves deeper into Cake Forest, decimating their traditional hunting grounds. For a few years now the seasons had been particularly harsh. Winter had moved into Randall and chosen to stay, like an unwelcome guest. Many of the spring crops had been bitten by the sharp teeth of late frosts, leaving the fruit barrels and hay barns slumped with melancholic abandonment. Heavy summer rains poured sorrow over the sodden fields, drowning vegetables, sickly calves, and the anguished bleats of soggy lambs. Even the eggs refused to float. Autumn took the baton from summer and added spices of hail and hoar for additional seasoning, until winter once more threw its icy cloak around the village. In Cake Forest, the wolf pack dug rabbits from burrows with increasing desperation and undertook occasional night raids into Randall for the paltry fowl, risking scorched fur and bruised limbs from the wrath of angry villagers. In the unforgiving grip of hunger, people and animals became more gaunt and more fractious. One evening, Thorin and Jaha were wrestling. A playful tangle of ear bites and tail nips, the pack watched with lidded eyes and aching bones, wrought from famine and fatigue. Thorin sank his teeth deep into Jaw's flanks, and spirited yelps suddenly became snarling growls. The puncture wound dribbled fat, red tears across the flaxen fur. Lycidas pounced into the quarrel, pushing his forepaws into Thorin's neck, pinning him to the damp earth. "Save your bite to feed the pack, not to damage it," Lycidas warned. Thorin gave a submissive yap and slunk back to the shadows to lick his wounds. There was a madness bubbling within the pack, driven by callous hunger. Lycidas pressed his nose to the ground, his brow furrowed with the burden of pack's fate. As he padded softly through the undergrowth, he scented a young hair above the icy chill. Lycidas pounced, cascading earth and leaves as he cleaved the ground for a taste of warm flesh. But the hair was already gone, through another subterranean shaft that surfaced upwind, offering the possibility of life for another day. The wolf snuffled the black earth, illuminated by a slice of silver moonlight threading through the trees. Digging a little more, he pulled out a small, oddly shaped pot and, holding the vessel between his front paws, began to lick the wriggling worm that writhed around the base, slimy but satisfying. Lycidas startled back as a small puff of smoke formed an ethereal whisper around him. It wreathed and murmured, a soft cloud of nothing, yet yielded a promise of everything. The wisp swirled and settled, a strange form, half fairy, half shadow, shimmered in the gentle breeze of night. "Whilst you may be brave, you may also be foolish. So will your wish be wise or rash?" Lycidas cocked his head. The wisp swirled, kissing a soft breath across the wolf's face. Apparently, there were terms and conditions even back then, and Lycidas was told his request for more wishes was not within warranty. One wish was all he could have. The canny wolf considered. Maybe he could ask for a dwelling of straw or sticks in which the pack could take shelter from the icy winds and winter snows. Yet, these dwellings could easily be blown down by the huff and puff of a strong wind. Lycidas considered further. Bricks surely would be stronger. The pack would be protected from the harshest forces of winter and would have a store for food. The pack had no food. What was the point of shelter if there was no food? Without food, the shelter was nothing but a crypt. The wish then had to be for an endless supply of food. Surely, Lycidas nestled his skinny jaw between his skinny paws and thought some more. To ask for copious food would strengthen and feed the pack, but with no basic instinct of hunger to drive them or hold them together, that would be disastrous. The wolves would become bored, lazy, antagonistic, and argumentative. Besides, unlimited food would also attract unwanted attention from other packs in nearby woods looking for a share of the spoils. Packs that were still driven by basic instinct, not become sluggish by satiated ennui. So there had to be a compromise, a potential supply of food, but not too much and not too easy. A situation that kept the instincts of the pack but not the desperation. Lycidas looked towards the blinking lanterns of Randall. Perhaps an ally in the camp of the enemy could be useful. With careful planning and close collaboration, the pack could have a supply line of fresh meat until the end of this cruel cycle of freeze and storms. And so it was that Lycidas found himself transformed into a shepherd boy guarding the flocks of Randall. No one remembered a time before he was there. For the villagers, it seemed he was always there, a part of the fabric of their landscape, stitched into the seams of life. The shepherds seemed a little confused and uneasy, however, because he didn't clearly recall the boy's arrival, and the flocks seemed jittery and skittish when the child strolled amongst them, wielding his crook to trip their ankles. But most of all, the shepherd didn't like the risk of being caught as he smuggled the occasional lamb down the hillside to the skillful hands of his butcher brother-in-law and into the mouths of his starving relatives. Lycidas settled and salivated amongst his new flock, and no one but his faithful deputy Thorin knew. Before the metamorphosis, the two wolf pack leaders had discussed the situation. "We should keep this from the others," Lycidas advised. "That way you will be providing sufficient meat to keep them from starvation. And they won't be tempted to attack the flock themselves, which could bring them and me into danger." "Of course," Thorin conceded. "My lips are sealed." They agreed that a faint half-howl discernible only to lupine ears would be a signal for them to meet at the northern boundary fence. Lycidas would provide the lamb, Thorin would provide the slaughter. The pack would have enough sustenance until the snows melted, when the pack could, once again, save themselves. Lycidas found his human form clumsy and awkward. He hated the upright stance which exposed his most vulnerable organs to the world. He hated having to chew on a flat cake of unleavened cornbread, whilst he drove the most vulnerable lamb to the northern boundary for Thorin to kill. He hated the thought of Thorin and the pack feasting on the supple, tender flesh he had delivered to them, without a bite himself. But most of all, he hated the mind-numbing, boring monotony of watching over the stupid, woolly beasts night after night. As the village slept and he chewed and chewed on the tasteless cornbread, his stomach grumbled and his appetite groused. At first the arrangement had been relatively simple and effective. The shepherd boy would occasionally give a half-howl, herd a lamb to the boundary fence, where Thorin would collect it between his jaws and carry it off to the pack. The following morning would see an extensive search, but the missing lamb would never be found, and the boy would be thrashed for being so careless and not watching over the flock as he should. Lycidas looked forward to the day the wish was reversed, so he could sink his dagger teeth into the pallid neck of the shepherd. The pack would have to wait. This would be his kill and his alone, though they would be welcome to the mangy mutton of the shepherd's flesh. Once Lycidas was sure that all the life had left the eyes, and the only thrashing then would be the jerks and spasms of the shepherd's final seconds. After 3 more lost lambs and 1 beating too many, Lycidas determined that a change of tactics was required. He paced the shepherd's hut on his spindly, shepherd boy legs, huffing and puffing, considering the various options. It was as though the smoke wisp was here again, but without the terms and conditions. Maybe it was time for the wish to end and for Lycidas to return to the pack. He could certainly do with a decent meal. Yet there would be no decent meal without him continuing in his role as the shepherd boy for a few more months. Perhaps the entire fence of the northern boundary should just be wrecked, and the sheep be encouraged towards the forest and ultimately the pack. But that would just provide too much food all at once, and Lycidas would probably be beaten to death by hook or by crook. Perhaps if the boy raised an alarm that wolves were attacking, but no wolves attacked. If he did that enough times, the villagers might stop believing him and the wolves could attack for real. It was worth a try. At least it might deflect another beating. 3 cold nights went by before the shepherd boy ran down the hillside, a lopsided, 2-legged stumble, screaming wolves and help in a howl that woke the village. Within minutes, a snake of torchlight slithered around the village boundary and headed across the hills. The shepherd assumed the mantle of importance and led the procession, jabbing with his crook towards distance and shadows. The sheep were counted, the locks checked on the chicken barns, and the boy was patted on the back for his vigilance. A week later, the fiery snake circled Randall once more, and once more the flame was extinguished without a wolf being sighted. Barns were checked, chickens shushed, and the shepherd boy was scrutinized with suspicion. The sheep were counted and all were present, but there were now grumblings amongst the villagers on the way back down the hillside about the reliability of the shepherd boy. The people did not like being wakened from their deep repose for a danger that, it seemed, was not really there. The whines and moans were carried on the breeze to Lycidas, who smiled to himself. Thorin too heard the chatter and he too snickered. It would not be long now before he could gather the pack and the flock would be theirs. By the third cry of wolf, the serpent light of inquiry was barely a worm. A few wavering lanterns half-heartedly cast shadows along the southern fence before the stars reclaimed the night and the people went back to their warm beds. Even the chickens tutted rather than clucked. The shepherd despaired. He railed and raged at the shepherd boy who stared impassively with big, brown, fathomless eyes. Perhaps if the shepherd had been more attentive he would have noticed the boy's eyes and what big lashes he had. All the better to see you with, especially in the gloom of another rainy night. He might have noticed the sharp blades of teeth that shone in the moonlight. All the better to bite you with, but the shepherd was too angry and stomped down the hillside, his lantern wobbling with the sway of his silly, upright, human gait. The date was set for 4 days later, then the wish would expire and Lycidas could return victorious to his pack. The night was kind. It was raining hard and sideways. Humans struggled with sideways rain as it got into their pointless, front-facing eyes and blinded them in liquid fractals, causing them to stagger around comically, bumping into each other whilst swiping their shiny faces with sodden sleeves. Lycidas had been amazed at the limitations of human sight and indeed all senses when he'd first become a shepherd boy. It was like a heavy blanket had been cast over him, dulling every sound, blearing every sight, and almost wiping out his sense of smell completely. How on earth had these inferior beings managed to organize themselves so well? Lycidas had plenty of ideas to take back to the pack once his wish expired, which would help the wolves finally take their righteous place at the top of the food chain. He looked forward to sharing his ideas with Thorin. The wolf packs would gather together as one, and the revolution would begin. At 5 past midnight, Lycidas ran down the hillside howling cries of attack and wolves. A flicker of a lantern suggested a possible response, but then a drunken yell and the extinguishing of the light marked the period to the night, and the village slept on. Lycidas continued to howl and the village continued to sleep. In the chicken barn, there was barely a cluck. Lycidas made his way to the northern boundary, funneling his woolly charges into a cone of compliant panic and worried bleats. He felt lither and more alive than he had for a long time. Springing and vaulting over the divots and grassy knolls, he sniffed the air. Even the heaven scent of a young hare could not distract him, though he salivated at the thought of the fresh flesh. The wish was starting to wear off. Lycidas felt his lupine urges becoming stronger and stronger. Thorin and the pack skulked in the darkness as Lycidas pushed the flock closer and closer to the boundary. Then there was completed pandemonium. The efficiency of an assassin's assault. The wolves bounded the fence and it became almost too easy. Every wolf found a kill of its own. The bleeding panic carried down the hillside, but the serpent was too slow, and the lanterns were still being lit as the final wolf carried off its carrion. Almost final, Thorin stared at the boy. With the crook and the long lashes, Lycidas winked. "I'll be home soon," he said, as he fell to his knees, his legs already starting to twist and bend back into hunches. "No, it's best you don't return," Thorin replied, and sprang at the throat of the boy. The following day the shepherd reported that 13 sheep and the shepherd boy were missing, and there was one dead wolf by the fence of the northern boundary. The villagers of Randall wept for the boy and the lost mutton. Some thought this meant more punishment to come, but others felt it was a final sign of retribution and the portent of change and new beginnings. The local witch wandered in the pastures, dancing her skirts in the breeze and rolling in the frozen grass. She said she had lifted the curse of the village, and for a while there was some relief. 5 months later, when the spring crops failed again, a noose was tied around her neck and she was strung from the village gibbet. Meanwhile, in the forest of Keth, Thorin and the pack raged against the treachery of Lycidas. Thorin told how Lycidas had been living as a lone wolf on the other side of the pasture, abandoning the pack in their time of greatest need but living in abundance off the people's livestock. Thorin recalled how it had become his responsibility to carry out daring raids on the flocks of Randall and how he had always brought back a kill, even though it was at great personal risk. Now Lycidas was dead, and Thorin, with heavy heart and a deep sigh, which sounded very much like a huff and a puff, took up his role as the alpha wolf. He bowed his head and, expressing a desire to reflect a while on his grief and responsibilities, he retreated a little way into the forest. Thorin padded softly through the undergrowth when suddenly the heaven scent of a young hare blended with the icy chill. He pounced, more from habit than hunger, but the hare was already gone, no doubt through a subterranean shaft that surfaced upwind and away towards the possibility of life for another day. As a slice of silver moonlight threaded through the trees, Thorin snuffled around the roots of a tall oak. Digging a little more, he pulled out a small, oddly shaped pot and holding the vessel between his front paws, he licked the gleaming surface. A small puff of smoke formed an ethereal whisper around him. It wreathed and murmured a soft cloud of nothing, yet yielded a promise of everything. The wisp swirled and settled, a strange form, half fairy, half shadow, shimmered in the gentle breeze of night. Whilst you may be brave, you may also be foolish. So will your wish be wise or rash? Hello, said Thorin. I've been expecting you, and I know exactly what I want. Rumored through Richmond by young Akpashbi. In the heart of Houston's Broadway Street lived Richmond, a peculiar 50-year-old man known for his love of spreading gossip. What made Richmond truly remarkable, however, was the uncanny nature of his rumors. Somehow, they always seemed to come true. Word traveled fast whenever Richmond began to whisper his tales, and the townsfolk would brace themselves for the inevitable realization of his words. There was an air of both curiosity and fear surrounding his gossip, for nobody quite understood how he possessed such foresight. Huddled in the heart of the Broadway Street community stood Richmond's small greenhouse, a symbol of both simplicity and resilience, surrounded by a quaint garden bursting with vibrant blooms and aromatic herbs. The house exuded a sense of tranquility and warmth that beckoned visitors. The structure itself was modest, with weathered wooden siding painted in a faded shade of green, reminiscent of the lush foliage that thrived within its walls. A white picket fence lined the perimeter, adding a touch of charm to the property while maintaining a sense of openness and accessibility. The front porch, adorned with a few well-worn rocking chairs, invited passersby to pause, relax, and engage in conversations that often transcended casual pleasantries. One sunny afternoon, Richmond emerged from his house, a mischievous glint in his eyes. The people of Broadway Street, aware of his unique ability, couldn't help but feel a sense of unease or foreboding as they awaited his latest revelation. They knew that whatever he uttered would undoubtedly come to pass. With a sly grin, Richmond weaved his tale throughout the town, declaring that flesh-eating flowers were being secretly sold in one of the giant superstores. His words sent shivers down the listeners' spines, their minds conjuring up images of horrifying plants lurking within the shelves of even their houses, churches, libraries, and grocery stores. The news spread like wildfire, and soon, a sense of panic gripped the community. People avoided the superstore, fearing the consequences of encountering these deadly blooms. It seemed as if the town was held captive by Richmond's words, caught in a web of fear spun by his gossipy superpower. Days turned into weeks, and the town remained in a state of heightened anxiety. Richmond, observing the consequences of his rumor, began to feel the weight of his power. He had never intended for his gossip to cause such distress, yet he couldn't deny the thrill that surged through him whenever his predictions came true. Haunted by guilt, Richmond resolved to set things right. He embarked on a personal mission to find the truth behind his latest rumor, determined to alleviate the fears that had gripped Broadway Street. He delved into the research, scouring the depths of the internet and visiting local botanical experts, hoping to uncover the reality behind the spin. Days turned into nights as Richmond followed every lead, uncovering a hidden world of rare and exotic plants. Eventually, his journey led him to a renowned botanist who confirmed the existence of a rare species of carnivorous flowers known as Dionaea carniaris. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Richmond returned to Broadway Street. He stood before the community, who had gathered to hear his next proclamation. He admitted his fault, Expressing remorse for the fear he had inadvertently caused, with sincerity in his voice, he explained the truth behind the flesh-eating flowers, assuring them that the superstore was safe. Relief washed over the crowd as Richmond's words sank in. The town slowly began to regain its composure, realizing that their fears had been unfounded. Richmond's gossip had been both a curse and a blessing, an odd power that had inadvertently brought the truth to light. In the aftermath of the ordeal, the people of Broadway Street developed a newfound respect for Richmond. They recognized the weight he carried as the town's unlikely harbinger of truth. Richmond, humbled by their forgiveness, vowed to use his superpower for good to bring awareness to hidden truths and dispel unfounded fears. As the years passed, Richmond became a trusted figure in the community. His gossip, tempered by caution and verified information, helped the townspeople navigate their lives with newfound knowledge. Richmond's peculiar ability transformed from a source of fear to one of enlightenment, bringing the community closer together. As Richmond continued his role as the town's harbinger of truth, a new presence emerged in the community: Annabelle, a copycat who had witnessed the power Richmond held over the community, sought to replicate his ability to spread rumors. However, unlike Richmond, Annabelle had no regard for the consequences her words would bring. News of Annabelle's deceptive nature reached Richmond's ears, and he knew that his work was far from over. He understood the danger of allowing someone with ill intentions to hold the community hostage with false information. Determined to protect the people he had come to care for, Richmond set out to confront Annabelle. On Broadway Street, at the heart of the community, stood the majestic Broadway Street Town Hall, a grand architectural marvel that served as the gathering place for important discussions and momentous occasions. As the sun cast its golden rays upon the ornate facade, the entrance doors swung open, welcoming a stream of people from all walks of life. Inside the town hall, a sense of anticipation hung in the air, as hundreds of residents filled the spacious auditorium. They were drawn to the day's proceedings based on Annabelle's latest rumor. The high ceilings, adorned with intricate moldings and sparkling chandeliers, added a touch of grandeur to the atmosphere. Rows of plush seats stretched out before a raised platform, where a polished wooden podium awaited the speaker. The walls of the auditorium were adorned with photographs and portraits depicting the rich history and notable figures of Broadway Street. Each image told a story, evoking a deep sense of pride and community spirit among the attendees. The vibrant tapestries that adorned the walls reflected the diverse cultural tapestry that made up the fabric of the town. As the meeting commenced, a hushed silence settled over the room, punctuated only by the occasional whisper and the creaking of chairs. The air was charged with a mix of nervousness, determination, and hope, as the community gathered to discuss a matter of utmost importance. The stage was set, adorned with a large backdrop bearing the emblem of Broadway Street, a symbol of unity and progress. Behind the podium, a panel of community leaders and officials awaited their turn to address the audience, their faces reflecting a mixture of responsibility and dedication. The stage was bathed in a soft spotlight, casting a glow upon the speakers as they stepped forward to address the crowd. Microphones stood ready to amplify their voices, ensuring that their messages reached every corner of the hall. The buzz of anticipation grew with each passing moment, as the gravity of the situation weighed upon everyone present. As the speakers began, their voices filled the hall, resonating with passion and conviction. They spoke of the challenges facing the community, the opportunities for growth, and the collective responsibility to shape the future of Broadway Street. Ideas, concerns, and solutions were shared, echoing through the hall as a chorus of voices united in pursuit of a common goal. The energy in the room was palpable, as the attendees listened intently, nodding in agreement, raising hands to ask questions, or applauding in support. Emotions flowed freely, from moments of passionate disagreement to instances of shared understanding and unity. And then Annabelle's voice rang out. "Impeach the mayor." Everyone was shocked. "I have evidence of impropriety on the part of the mayor. He must be impeached." As confusion and bewilderment lingered in the air, Richmond stepped forward and with his booming voice said, "Please, Mr. Speak, disregard the young lady. She is only here to spread wild rumors." "No, Mr. Richmond, let the young lady step forward. She who asserts must prove. That is the law. The showdown between the two rumor mongers has begun. Tension as thick as the bark of a tree built up instantly and crackled in the air. Richmond, weathered by the weight of his unique ability, stood with conviction, his eyes filled with a mixture of concern and determination. Annabelle, fueled by a thirst for power, held her ground with a smirk on her face, reveling in the chaos she had sown. Her rumor was that the mayor was having an affair with the education board's secretary, a married mother of 4. I won't let you manipulate this community any longer, Annabelle, Richmond declared, his voice filled with authority. Your false rumors are causing unnecessary anger, passion, and harm. It's time for the truth to prevail. Annabelle laughed, dismissing Richmond's words with a wave of her hand. Oh, Richmond, you've become quite the self-righteous hero, haven't you? But what makes your rumors any different from mine? We're both playing with people's lives, just in different ways. There was a loud scoff from the crowd. Richmond's gaze hardened as he replied, There is a crucial distinction. Annabelle, my rumors are rooted in truth and carefully verified to avoid causing undue harm. I aim to enlighten, not manipulate. You, on the other hand, thrive on chaos and deception. Annabelle scoffed, the arrogance in her voice evident. Truth, lies, what does it matter? People will believe what they want to believe. It's their own fault for being so gullible. The exchange of words intensified, each combatant fighting to defend their perspective. But Richmond knew that he had to do more than just argue. He had to prove to Annabelle the importance of responsible information dissemination and protect the community from her deceitful influence. With a sudden surge of determination, Richmond revealed evidence he had meticulously gathered, exposing Annabelle's fabrications and the harm they had caused. Witness accounts, documents, and undeniable facts painted a damning picture of Annabelle's malicious intent and how she had photoshopped some naked photos to make them look like her victims were having an affair. As the truth unfolded, the people of Broadway Street began to see through Annabelle's facade. Doubts arose within them, and they turned away from her, seeking the clarity and honesty that Richmond provided. The power Annabelle had held over the community crumbled, leaving her exposed and isolated. In the aftermath of the showdown, Annabelle was left with a choice: to continue down her path of deception or to change her ways. Witnessing the impact of her actions and the strength of Richmond's conviction, she chose the latter. Annabelle acknowledged the harm she had caused and vowed to make amends. Richmond, ever the believer in redemption, extended a hand of guidance to Annabelle. He shared his knowledge and experience, teaching her the importance of integrity and empathy. Slowly but surely, Annabelle began to mend the broken trust she had shattered. Over time, the wounds inflicted by Annabelle's false rumors healed, and the community found solace in Richmond's steadfast commitment to truth. Annabelle became a testament to the power of personal growth and the potential for change. Together, Richmond and Annabelle worked to rebuild trust within the community. They became unlikely allies, using their unique abilities to expose falsehoods and enlighten the people they had once endangered. Their collaboration served as a reminder that even in the face of deception, there is always the possibility for redemption and unity. And so, the community witnessed a transformation. The clash between Richmond and Annabelle not only resolved their personal conflict but also instilled a sense of resilience within the community. United by the shared pursuit of truth, the town emerged stronger, armed with the wisdom to discern fact from fiction and to stand against those who sought to exploit their trust. Richmond's work continued, now reinforced by Annabelle's newfound commitment to responsible rumor-mongering. Together, they embarked on a journey to ensure that their town would never again fall victim to manipulation or falsehood. The power of their words became a force for good, enlightening the community and fostering a sense of unity and resilience that would endure for generations to come. As Richmond and Annabelle joined forces to uphold the value of truth, their unique abilities continued to shape the destiny of their community on Broadway Street. Their focus shifted beyond addressing false rumors, as they recognized the potential of their powers to prevent grave mistakes and guide the town toward a brighter future. The community faced an economic crossroads. with impending decisions that could impact the livelihoods of its residents. Sensing the urgency, Richmond dove into extensive research, gathering information about the potential consequences of the proposed economic ventures of cryptocurrency. With careful consideration, he began to spread rumors based on his findings, aiming to safeguard the community from making ill-informed choices. The people of Broadway Street, remembering Richmond's track record of accurate rumors, paid heed to his words. They engaged in open discussions, scrutinizing the proposed projects and weighing the pros and cons. As a result, they collectively decided to steer clear of ventures that held the potential to disrupt the local economy and harm their way of life. The town's avoidance of these economic pitfalls proved invaluable. While neighboring communities struggled with the fallout from their ill-fated ventures, Broadway Street flourished, its economy stable and resilient. Richmond's ability to foresee the consequences of certain actions saved them from financial turmoil. Emboldened by this success, Richmond turned his attention towards a new challenge that had recently emerged: the fear surrounding vaccines, misinformation, and unfounded rumors had gripped the community, leading to hesitancy and putting lives at risk. Recognizing the urgent need for accurate information, Richmond and Annabelle collaborated to combat the spread of fear and mistrust. Drawing from their combined knowledge, they embarked on a campaign to dispel the myths and provide factual information about vaccines. They organized community forums, inviting medical experts to address concerns and clarify any misconceptions. Richmond shared stories of how his previous accurate rumors had saved lives and emphasized the importance of relying on credible sources of information. Over time, the walls of doubt began to crumble. The people, inspired by Richmond's reputation and the evidence he presented, regained trust in the power of vaccines. They sought vaccination, knowing that it was crucial not only for their own well-being but also for the collective health of their community. Broadway Street became a beacon of vaccine acceptance, with immunization rates soaring and the community experiencing the benefits of protection against infectious diseases. Richmond's old rumors, which had once caused fear, now played a pivotal role in dispelling misconceptions and guiding the town toward a safer and healthier future. As the years passed, Richmond and Annabelle continued their tireless work, using their powers to combat misinformation and promote truth. They became revered figures on Broadway Street, celebrated for their unwavering dedication to the well-being of the community. Richmond's unique gift, once a source of mystery and skepticism, had transformed into a force for positive change. He and Annabelle had harnessed their abilities to protect the town from economic pitfalls and combat vaccine hesitancy, forever leaving an indelible mark on the fabric of their community. Broadway Street thrived, guided by the principles of truth and critical thinking. Richmond and Annabelle's legacy lived on, reminding the people to question, verify, and rely on credible information. In their footsteps, a new generation of truth seekers emerged, carrying the torch of knowledge and empowering the community to overcome challenges with clarity and unity.